Welcome to Functionally Speaking, the podcast where two clinicians share one brain cell and way too many opinions.
I'm Laura, your mineral-obsessed dietitian who gets fired up about gut health, metabolism, and fertility, with enough sass to keep it interesting and enough nuance to keep it real.
And I'm Danielle, a physician assistant obsessed with gut health, hormones, and calling out the bullshit.
We're here for the nuance, the hot takes, the facts your certification skipped over, and the occasional spiral into chaos.
If you're a health coach, practitioner, or clinician who's slightly functional, just like our mitochondria in our recording process, you're in the right place.
We're not here to sugarcoat the science or pretend there's one right way to do this work. We're doing it our way, unfiltered, slightly feral, and always with love for the humans we serve. Let's get into it.
Oh my gosh. We're using a new piece of software today for recording. Our podcast, Human is Welcomed. We finally listened. But in our defense, we had batched a bunch of episodes. So now here we are on a new platform. Hopefully it holds up through this episode. But it's been a journey to get here today.
Best of luck to us. Sure has, but here we are.
Best of luck to us. Welcome back to Functionally Speaking, the clinical pod that spirals responsibly. It's never going to get old for me. We're like 15, 16? I don't know how many episodes.
I don't even know at this point. I've lost count.
What is today? Like what month? For some reason the other day I was like, what month is it right now? Like no one knows.
I don't know. You can convince me it's like February or like actually October like it is. I don't know.
TBD. What are we talking about today?
Why undereating is wrecking your clients' hormones and metabolism. Because we see this all the freaking time.
Every day in our DMs with our clients.
It's one of the basics over biohacking. Like so many people want the fancy schmancy, things to do when really a lot of times we see undereating being the cause of so many things.
It really is. And I think like when I started explaining it to my clients that number one, like calories are energy. That's why you're so tired, because if you're not putting enough energy into the machine, like the machine as in your body is not going to go. It was really like a big turning point. I think people like really started to click with that a lot better. I also think that we, especially we work with primarily women, and then, when the women feel better, they send their men to us. But just the onslaught of diet culture, from GLP-1s to bariatric surgery to the almond moms and the 100-calorie snack packs and all of it. I just feel like society has really set women up to be afraid of their hunger and afraid of eating and afraid of their bodies. And I feel like it's just really such a huge reason why so many women have the problems that they do. And then they go into their doctor and they're told that like, oh, are you sure it's not just anxiety kind of thing?
Or they're told like you need to eat less and move more without asking any background. So then there's this like cultural narrative that like less is more with nutrition, right? Like from your doctor to your coworker, to your mom, to your sister, like whoever you're talking to, this like underfueling has been normalized. It's normal, it's disciplined, it's healthy, it's good for you, whatever it is, right? Like we've normalized this undereating without ever calling undereating or underfueling. We label it. It's carnivore diet, it's fasting, it's, whatever. There's so many ones out there. I can't even think. Pro-metabolic, right? Like there's.
If it fits your macros, vegan, zone. God, remember the zone diet?
I remember the first I walked into a CrossFit gym, right? And I was so excited. And they're like, oh, we have a nutrition like seminar coming up. I'm like, oh my God, I'll be there. I love that. And they were preaching the zone diet. And I was like, well, of course I've got to read it. And I'm reading it and I'm doing the calculations for the blocks. And I'm like, this is 1,200 calories. And everyone's like, but I eat 8 blocks. I eat this many blocks or zone, whatever they were called. And I'm like,
I still don't understand it.
I'm like, this is 1,200 calories. But because you're telling everyone, I eat 12 blocks or whatever it is. Everyone's like, oh, you eat so much.
It's the same thing as like it's like Weight Watchers,
yes.
The Weight Watchers points is what like the zone blocks were in my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a way to classify how you're restricting food. And honestly, I don't know about you, but most of the time when clients work to me, one of their first things they ask me is, okay, what should I eat or what shouldn't I eat? And I'm like, first off, we're going to expand what you're doing. We're not like restriction is the last thing I do unless it's necessary. And like, we both believe in running celiac panels. Like, unless we believe that there is a true allergy or something that's truly harming someone, the goal is to expand the diet. The goal is not to restrict the diet. But so many people come from that background that you have to be very gentle, right? Because you're not, I think a lot of people come from a place of fear of like, if I eat more, I'm going to gain weight or, you know, whatever the belief is. So I also get it. And also like, it's sad because I'm like, no, 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 no. The point is not to put you into this tiny little hole and say you can only eat this. The point is to expand your diet and give you freedom while also giving you health, which I think gets lost in the weeds too for people who go from like macro counting all the way to intuitive eating. Like it's like we've just swung the pendulum back and forth as opposed to finding that middle ground.
Yes. And I think there's so much that I could touch on with that. But one of the biggest things that I think is important for clinicians to look out for, and the everyday human who's listening to this as well, is that disordered is very easily disguised as discipline, especially in like the fitfluencer community and even I would say like in functional medicine. I think both of us probably lean more towards that functional pendulum as opposed to like the conventional side. We have aspects of both in us, like both of us in our practices and the way that we talk to the clinicians in our group and everything. But man, it is so easy to be like, oh, that person's so disciplined. They're 3 months postpartum and they're working out 6 days a week, and you know, or they're training for a half marathon and they're only a couple of months postpartum and they're out there running 10 miles. And like when I hear stuff like that, or I see people with women who are 6% body fat, can I just say, like, I spent time in the single digit body fats. Like my body responded so hyper fast, and the discipline that you have to have and the things that you have to say no to and the way that you have to live your life to maintain that, it is just not compatible with actually being a healthy human. And so many people think like, oh, I see abs, that person's healthy. But to us as clinicians with a trained eye who have been through the macro counting, who have worked with people who, you know, the whole 9 yards, it's a very, very scary thing because it is so easily disguised. And I think for the clinicians out there, right, because that's who we're talking to, is it's like you really need to be almost, I hate to say this, but like you almost need to be hyper aware of the different ways that people can be restricting themselves, and it can not look like they're actually restricting. Like it's almost like a silent manipulation. Like I don't think people are being manipulative on purpose, but we know when people have a true eating disorder, there's a lot of manipulation that goes into that. And I feel like it's almost a more socially acceptable type of manipulation that occurs in the person who is like, I'm just disciplined, I'm not disordered.
Well, I also think people don't even know that they're disordered, right? Like there's not that level of recognition from that personal standpoint either. They think that discipline is healthy, whether it's because they heard it from their mom or they saw it in a magazine or they follow an influencer. It's just to the point where discipline has been so normalized that we just assume that it is healthy, as opposed to what we see often in our practice is disordered, because it shows, and you know, maybe that's what we'll talk about next, of like what we see in our undereating clients and things to look for. Because you know, I think it's easy for us sometimes to have the wool pulled over our eyes as practitioners as well. I think we've been in it long enough that both of us are always like maybe a little too cynical and too skeptical. But
no, me?
But like, I think it's important to recognize that like someone might not recognize disorder and you might not either, because they come to you and they're eating really quote unquote healthy. They're cooking their meals from home and doing all the things. But now all of a sudden there's some things that we start to uncover and look at, and we can say, okay, you may not think you're under eating, and perhaps they're not eating 1,200 calories. Perhaps they're eating 1,800 calories, but they're working out 6 days a week. That's still very much under eating. And so it's explaining to them through lab work a lot of times and through symptoms why it matters and what, like how we're seeing it, not just you need to eat more, right? Because that's scary. That's scary to a lot of people who have this belief that, well, if I eat more, I'm going to gain weight. And the point is, like, you're going to gain health. That's what we're aiming for. Weight is just an outcome. It's not the goal.
Preaching. I'm just like over here dancing about this for anyone who's like not watching it. Like I have just been on this kick about like people need to really be health focused and how important that is. But I do think, you know, like you said, speaking to the clinician, I think, you know, Brooke, our friend, and she's also a collaborative member, talks a lot about, you know, REDS and low energy availability and a lot of the lab work patterns that we see. So like from a dietitian standpoint, like what are some of the things when you start to see these things, see certain labs and hear certain things? It's just like putting those little puzzle pieces together that like, it just makes, you know how like I always say, like the hairs on the back of my neck will just like Like I just get that little tingly, like somebody put peppermint oil back there when I see these labs. What are those?
Honestly, even before I get to the lab, symptoms come first because usually we're waiting on labs, right? Like
Yeah.
someone tells me they're constipated, like red flag. Obviously,
Red
there's
flag.
other things that could cause constipation, but SIBO and disordered eating and eating disorders kind of all play in the same playground. And so it's very easy for that to be an overlap. And so it might not be full blown SIBO, but constipation is like, if you're not putting enough stuff in, you're not going to get enough stuff out. Like, that's just kind of how it works, right? Like, you need a plunger to get things out of there. And like, food is the plunger. So, like, I don't know, like, you got to get inputs to get outputs. How many ways can we make a fun, like, poop joke, Like, and that's how I explain it to people. I was
Oh my
like,
God.
if we like not pooping for multiple days in a row is so incredibly uncomfortable. I don't know a single person who would disagree with that. So if we can get someone pooping, usually that's like the first thing I can get going for people by being like, see, you eat enough, that moves enough, you feel better. When you feel better, you can do more things. Like
That happens
it
quick
does.
too. Like you said, like that you said usually it's the first thing. And I think that usually gets like a little bit of buy-in, like, oh my God, like I feel less people because people say I'm bloated. And I'm like, are you bloated or are you just not shitting?
Right. Like, do you need to
right?
poop?
Like that. Do we need Laura to sing you the poop song?
Which I will.
I have received a couple of poop voice memos from Laura, but yeah, so like not pooping daily, right?
The other thing,
missing periods or period problems.
I think one of the other like sneaky symptoms is waking up in the middle of the night.
Yes, I was hoping you were gonna go there.
And people are always shocked when I say that. And I'm like, or we're doing the intake and I'm like, oh, like tell me more about your sleep. And then they start saying like, oh yeah, like it's good. I can fall asleep pretty easily, but I usually wake up between 2 and 4 and I can't get back to bed. And I'm like, interesting. Oftentimes this is a blood sugar issue, but then we have to dig in, why is it a blood sugar issue? And a lot of times it's due to the lack of eating enough nutrients during the day or just eating enough in general, which people are like, but would my blood sugar go crazy if I ate too much? Yeah, if you're going to eat like cookies and cake all day. But like we're talking about eating enough and eating enough of the right stuff, getting enough protein, getting enough fat, getting enough carbs, eating them all together, getting enough micronutrients, right? Like it's the whole picture. And so that sleeping, like I would say the pooping, the sleep,
Biggest
and then
red
usually
flag.
energy midday is the next one I look to as well. And those 3 things start coming together. It's because people are starting to eat enough. Now, we can dig into, I think you can get into the labs next, but like you start there with some of those symptoms, you start, like Danielle said, you get that buy-in from them. They start feeling better and you start connecting the dots to them of like, hey, you feel better. Like we haven't even touched like your metabolism and potential for weight loss and other things. We literally are just getting the bowels moving, getting blood sugar under control, and actually having energy, like you said earlier, to like get through your day.
Yeah, 100%. I think another sneaky one is anxiety. I want to touch on this really quick, like anxiety and then like mood stuff. I know Ellen Vora, she's a really amazing holistic psychiatrist. If you guys haven't read her book, The Anatomy of Anxiety, it's one that I recommend to clients. Almost every single client comes to me with some kind of mood stuff and they get a recommendation for this book. And it's really, they get a lot of good information. But Ellen, she talks about both from a blood sugar perspective and then also under eating and how that can cause, like she calls it anxiety, like anxiety. Is she's so dead on because like your neurotransmitters are made up of nutrients and vitamins. And if you're not getting enough of those, it's going to cause you problems with your mood. So it's like every single facet of our health is truly tied to nutrition. To me, that is the foundational building block, because if you are not getting enough food and you are not getting enough nutrition, nothing else is going to be going great. Like I really stand firm on that. And
when I was at my lowest adult weight, I was the most anxious I've ever been in my life. And I think most of my clients can also relate to that.
Yeah, 100%. And when it comes to, I know this isn't the point of this talk, but I've talked to so many women who are like, well, I just want to weigh what I did in my 20s, or I don't weigh what I did in my 30s anymore. And they've had kids and life and this, and it's like, are you really like, I don't weigh what I did in high school or college, and I don't think that we're supposed to. Like, I just don't think that that's normal. And, talking to people about managing expectations, I think is also important. But in addition to those symptoms, I think anxiety is a big one. Low libido, missing period, fatigue, energy, roller coaster, sleep, and pooping, I think was the other one that you mentioned. I would say those are kind of like the big ones. And then if I'm seeing those things, then I'm also seeing like low triglycerides, right? Like super low, right? I would say like below 50. And triglycerides can kind of be one of those things where it's like it needs to fit into the puzzle for me because we don't want our triglycerides really to be over 100. Conventional ranges go to like 150. I want to see them below 100 for sure. And I hope that like other clinicians do as well. And then blood sugar is another big one. Like if we're seeing a really low, like A1C, low fasting insulin, low fasting blood sugar, and then high cholesterol, like with those other symptoms, I'm like, okay, we need to be talking about with our clients, like, are we eating enough when we're seeing those things? And again, like every single one of these things that we're talking about could be due to other issues, right? But when you start to see a couple of these, like you really need to be thinking like, is my client eating enough? And I think you and I both would probably agree with this, that like just because your client is hitting that 2,000 calorie benchmark, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're eating enough food, especially with like depending on what their output is, right? And I think so many women think, oh, but I'm eating 2,000 calories. Sweetheart, you're exercising 6 days a week and you're doing sprints and you're lifting 5 days a week, and you need to be eating more. Like that's just not enough.
I've shifted over the years from really focusing to more of that micronutrient mineral. Like when I'm asking clients to track, we might do a day or two just so I have an idea of what the heck they're doing at home. But beyond that, I never really do macro tracking. But sometimes we'll do like micronutrient tracking just for a couple days to try to understand, like, is your potassium at 2,000 or are we at 4,000? Like, where are we? And it's really hard to get enough minerals with so little macro intake. So like below 2,000, below 2,500. Like it is hard to reach the
It's hard in general.
minimums. Right. And so like that's the other thing is like minerals and vitamins are like the spark plugs in their body. They're what makes everything work. If you go and Google a picture of metabolism and look at all the pathways and zoom in, you will see all the different minerals and cofactors and vitamins that play into metabolism. That's what starts a process and keeps the process going. And if you're not eating enough, there's no way you can get enough zinc. You can't get enough magnesium, potassium, iron, like all the inputs. So people come to us looking for supplements, and both of us that believe that supplements are supplemental and important, but like we go food first. Like if you're only eating 1,600 calories, there's no way you're going to hit 4,000 milligrams of potassium, which by the way, the RD is 4,700. I tell most of my clients to shoot for 4,000 so that we're like, scraping the surface, but like it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And I love that analogy of the spark plugs. I think it's so accurate. I mean, just like with the neurotransmitters and down to our cellular level, like if you don't have enough sodium and potassium or the right proportions, like your cells aren't going to function right. And I have long said this, like if your cells don't function right, your organs aren't working right. If your organs aren't working right, the organ system isn't. And then your body at large, right? Like there's just,
go back to biology. It's like,
there's just going to be dysfunction. And so it's just so hard to push your clients on this. I have some of them who are like, they're willing to eat more, but they still want to exercise more, right? And I'm like, okay, well, at least we're and sometimes that's just the place that you have to start with clients is like, okay, well, at least I can get them eating more and maybe I can get some buy-in with that, right? But I just think so few people think, oh, well, I'm eating 2,000 or 2,300 or 2,500 calories, but like the amount that they're burning through because of the stress that they're under, like it's insane, like how fast people burn through that stuff whenever they're stressed. And I have like a whole freebie that I'm working on right now about like stress and stress timelines, like because you talk about the stress timeline a lot and current stressors and what their coping mechanisms are and balances in sympathetic and parasympathetic, right? So I just think like all of that is something to take into consideration. And so many clients, I don't know about you, but they're like, they just want to lose weight. And I'm like, you are in such a stressful period of life right now that it's not a good idea. And I think so many clinicians are afraid to say that to their clients.
I have now gotten to the point where my marketing and my sales all says that weight loss is not a part of this program, because I got to the point where I was so fed up with, like, I wanted to really help people with their health, and weight to me is truly just an outcome. Like, it is not the goal. And like, I had a client who said, she's lost like, I think 6 pounds over the past like 3 months unintentionally, not like she wasn't trying to control anything.
Focusing on
tracking.
health.
She was literally just focusing on health. She probably reduced some inflammation. We actually got hydration into the cells as opposed to, outside of the cell. And like there's little things like that that make a huge difference. And blood sugar management, like all those things matter. And so I think part of the clinician's job is to continue to have that health first approach and let people know what are your non-scale victories, for a lack of better term. Like it's a lot of people used to call it, I don't know what they call them now, but like, victories that have nothing to do with the scale. Like I can't tell you how many clients in my past have been like, oh, well, my energy is so good and I'm sleeping better and I have more, like I can push more in the gym and blah, 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 but I haven't lost weight. And I'm like, why is it always like, it's like a moral failing to people if they haven't lost weight. And I think it's a lot driven by society and standards for female bodies and the fact that you go to your doctor and the first thing they do is check your weight, right? Like we put weight on a pedestal. And so people forget that like, no, actually your health should be on the pedestal and your weight is just kind of it's going to fluctuate. That's just part of life. And yes, we are not practitioners that think that like weight is never a problem, right? Like certainly it can impact health in so many different ways. But for a lot of the women that come to us, it's not the primary problem. And like, if you're not pooping well, if you're not sleeping well, if you don't have sex with your partner, like that's far more important to me than the number on the scale. That's just your relationship to gravity.
Yeah, 100%. Do we want to talk about like what's going on when people undereat, under the hood? Do we want to talk? Yeah. Do we want to talk about some of that real quick, or sneaky signs?
I mean, we can talk. We never really got into like you started with the triglycerides, and cholesterol. Like thyroid is another big one, right? Like elevated.
Yeah. I can't believe I missed that. Thank you.
Lowered T4, T3, elevated reverse T3, like all of that can be indicative. But once again, like Danielle was saying, I like to zoom out and just look at the whole picture. Like, what is this telling me between the like objective data and the subjective information from the client? What am I gathering? What does this all look like? You might see decreased sex hormone production, like low estrogen, low progesterone, low testosterone, high cholesterol. I've also seen low cholesterol. So
interesting.
Once again, you can't just take one. I think that has to do with poor gut health because they're not absorbing the nutrients, bile health. Like it could be a lot of different things, right? So yeah, I think it's just looking at the picture as a whole, and thyroid is a good indicator. Blood sugar, lipids, all are great indicators. And then you could also look at nutrients, right? Because part of it could be absorption issues, like B12 could be an absorption issue, or it could just be a pure intake issue, right? Like if someone, maybe they're not vegan, but they're just not eating a ton of protein because they don't want to bulk up or whatever, right? Like it's also understanding, like I always ask my clients, like one of my intake, I ask in the intake and then I ask in my onboarding session is like, if they're saying they don't eat something, I ask, is that a preference or is there a reason that you avoid this food? Not judgmental, just totally trying to understand because someone, like I just had someone recently say they don't eat red meat because so long ago people told her it was bad for her. So she's never found a way to incorporate it back in. And so she was like, I would love to explore that, but I've just never had a chance or like someone to help me with that, And like, cause there's also sometimes this mental block for people of like, you telling them that like red meat is good for you, your B12 and your iron are so low, this could really help. But they've been told, or they had, parents with a history of heart disease or whatever it might be. So there's this fear factor. And our goal is to help them implement and understand.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with all of that. And I can't believe I missed thyroid. That's such a common one to see.
I think you just like dove in. You were like, going deeper. You're like, that one's a given. I mean, because I think thyroid is kind of a given.
It is. Yeah. And I mean, that's definitely something if I'm seeing that picture. And I think one of the important things here too is like, when you get that client who has a lot of these signs and then they want to increase their activity level, they want to train for a race. And it's like, it's just not the time, in my opinion. And I hate saying no to women like that, or like feeling like I'm disempowering to them when I have, the name of my company is Empowered Mind and Body. Like I want women to feel empowered. And I think I said this on one of my recent podcasts. Like, I think sometimes we think about empowering only as like how much more can someone do, when we need to kind of like rebrand it into like, what is best for me in this season of my life, or to the clinician, like what is best for this client, and helping them assess and understand like what their capacity is in that season of life with like, what do I need to be eating and how much output can I afford, it's almost like literally spending your money. Like, how much can I afford to spend on my output in this season of life, right? And I think that those are just really important conversations to be having. So
That capacity conversation literally comes up on a daily basis with me with
all
clients.
the time. It should
And
all the time.
it's just because I think people don't realize, right? They're comparing themselves to their sisters and their colleagues and the social media fitness influencers and whoever without taking into their own capacity, right? Of like, I work with a ton of postpartum women and like, I can relate to them on a very deep level. Like, I used to be a competitive athlete. It is not the season for me. I have no goals except to show up and move my body so that I can lift my kids and keep up with my kids. But a lot of women, I understand, like, want to get back to themselves. And I don't blame them for that. But understanding that you just went through some of the most demanding stages of your life, the biggest hormonal shifts you will ever experience, the most depleting experiences you will ever experience. And then you're asking your body to perform. And it's just a
Yeah.
lot. And
It's
it's
just a
like,
lot.
it's not that we don't believe, like, we believe women can do amazing things. We are women who do amazing things. And also, capacity is not always there. And so, having that empathy, I think, is empowering to a lot of our clients because they have someone on their team saying, I believe in you. And also, doing less right now is going to allow you to do more later. So, being that compassionate clinician who gets it and isn't telling them it's not no forever, it's no right now.
Just with what I've been going through with my like pelvic floor recently, like you need to be a clinician who practices what they preach with that. Like you can't be someone who's out there training through a marathon complaining about not sleeping and oh I skipped breakfast and also asking your clients to do the exact opposite of you. Like I just don't I really think that you need to be showing your people that you're doing those things and having those conversations. Like I have a couple of clients who I literally like was sending them voice memos telling them about that because I'm like, listen, I get it. Like I too was a competitive athlete. Like and I still like think that I have that in me. And there are just seasons where it's not gonna go. Like it just I work with some postpartum women, but I would say my population is more very type A, highly successful, like that, like nose to the ground, like grind type of person. And they can be that, it can also be the postpartum woman who is that person as well. But that is like really my niche. And I do so much talking about like exploring that capacity and like how much are you working? What does your commute look like? Are you bringing work home? Like, do you have a family? Do you have young children? What are your responsibilities in the house? What are your partner's responsibilities? What can you outsource? How many days are you working out? Like all of that has a role. And then like, in this stress sheet that I have, it like, I mean, it has everything from like aging parents to, difficulty with friendships and moving and divorce. I mean, there's so many different things to consider when we're looking at like, how do I need to be fueling myself and how much capacity do I have for exercise?
I think capacity is one of the big. It's just the biggest conversation that I have
Now,
over and over and over again. And then also, I think it coming back to like, how do you get your client to buy in to the feeding or like not under fueling, not under eating anymore? And a lot of it just comes from that education piece and showing them through their symptoms and their lab work. Like it's amazing what can be done in such a short period of time by eating better or
yeah.
eating more, not better, just eating more, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you and I are both like, we would prefer to see people add things before they're taken away.
I feel like we're
Do we
so
just,
slow to take away.
I really am. I don't like, that's the last thing that I want to see people doing. And I think like just something to wrap up is maybe some sneaky signs that clinicians miss. And one of them that we have written down here is the like, oh, I can't tolerate X, Y, or Z food, right? So like if you hear your client saying like I can't tolerate white rice, like white rice is the most widely tolerated food out there, or like I can't tolerate chicken or beef, like a protein source. And usually it's going to be the carb things. It's going to be like, I can't tolerate potatoes. I can't tolerate white rice. Like that should be a red flag for you of like, maybe there's some disordered eating going on here and like really trying to assess and explore, like, is this somebody that I need to refer out to somebody who's a specialist in that area? Like, is it that severe or is it something that we just need some reframing and some assistance with? But that's a big one that comes up for me. The discipline as disorder, like over like the exercise purging. I didn't even realize that was a term. Brooke told me that at one point. If they're like one of those people who's totally willing to eat more, but they like just increase their exercise, like that's a red flag.
I think another red flag on the journey is if you discuss all of this and educate and you're not seeing improvement in symptoms, like this should be a pretty, not that there's ever a quick fix in health, but it's like, it's pretty fast, like changes, like quick energy improves, constipation improves, like you'll see that in a couple of weeks. So if you're not seeing improvement, and maybe you didn't address it to begin with, or maybe you had questions, but they, you know, kept saying, no, I'm fine. If you're not seeing the improvement, I would really double back on it and say, okay, like we're not seeing bowel movements increase, we're not seeing sleep improve or energy improve, then that also is a red flag too, because you should see things improving by increasing to an adequate level, to an appropriate level of food.
Yeah, I think one of the things you said recently to me with these clients is like, if those things aren't happening and they sound like, and they're hesitant about like increasing food or decreasing exercise, like ask them again, like, hey, like, what are your goals? Like, you can't have both. This is not the Goldilocks situation. Sometimes we need to choose. Most of the time, I would say we need to choose between pursuing health or pursuing performance, right? We talk about a lot of the time that just that continuum. And if we try to push too hard on that performance, health will suffer. I mean, you worked at Inside Tracker. You talk a lot of the times about like just the higher performing athletes, and the blood work did not look the healthiest a lot of the time. So I think that that is, you know, maybe just a good note to end on here is, you know, just because you're having really great performance doesn't mean you're super healthy. And yeah, do you have final thoughts?
You know, I think that it's just a good reminder that like a lot of people need the coaching and they need the support because it's so overwhelming out there. And there are a lot of competing goals. And so I think people just, they, one, they don't know their capacity, and two, they don't know that it's probably not realistic to have, you know, high performing goals and health goals. And I think that's where a clinician really can come in and help someone understand how, one, that they're under fueling, and two, how to correct that in a very gentle manner, because this doesn't have to be this like big refeeding or reverse diet. It can be so gentle of like, you know, if they're only having coffee for breakfast, that's such a quick fix. Like, have them actually eat breakfast. If they're eating a quote unquote good lunch, because that's what people will say, you know, I'm good all day and then I get home and I'm starving. No, you're just under eating all day, and then you have no, like, you're hungry at night, right? Kind of like saying what they're saying, but say it in more like from your angle, sometimes draws in that perspective too. I can't tell you how many times I've said that to people, like, no, you're just under eating during the day and you're hungry at night. And when they hear that, they're like, oh, because they think it's some moral failing of their own. They have no willpower. There's something wrong with them. They start realizing that it's just physiology, that it's just their body doing its thing. All of a sudden, it takes that pressure off, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll eat breakfast because, yeah, you're right. Like, cool. So, like, that's our goal. Our goal is to help us do that.
Yeah, I literally have said for a long time,
yeah,
like, just you're not binging, you're hungry.
Because you've been restricting. So,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's, if you don't binge, if you're not hungry, you don't binge. It's just kind of the way the human brain works.
That everyone talks about goes away. But what do we know? What do we know?
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up on that. And with that, if you guys are interested, if you're a clinician out there who is looking for your people and a place where community meets education, that's why Laura and I created Unconventional Collaborative. So you can go to unconventionalcollaborative.com. You can join on the spot and get access to all of our past education resources, all of our protocols, guides. We just had a bunch of new people come into the collaborative with our GI map webinar, tons and tons of resources, and you get access, like pretty much unlimited access to pick our brains with any help that you need with your clients or your business. So unconventionalcollaborative.com or at unconventional.collaborative on Instagram. And we will see you guys
Bye.
next week.